slowly and you start thinking about change. Then today we're actually joined by Julie and Brooke, both of whom once lived in the United States and later made the big move to Korea. So out of all the cities in the world you could have chosen, you both ended up in Seoul. So to start things off on a personal note, Julian, what led you to make this huge decision?
Yeah, so I moved to Seoul about 2 years ago because I wanted to reconnect with my culture as well as just wanted to experience to living abroad as well. So I was raised in the US as a second-generation Korean American, and while I am a proud American and I love my country, I realized that in my 20s I didn't really know much about my own heritage. After moving out of my family's home when I was 18, my Korean was just getting worse. I was barely eating Korean food and I felt increasingly disconnected from that part of myself. So I made the pretty big decision to put the effort towards connecting to that side of myself back when I was 24. I shifted my career, packed up my life in LA, and I moved to Korea as a way of reconnecting with who I am. And choosing Seoul felt like the most natural choice for me because it's where all my friends and family I do have in Korea, and I wanted to be close to that support system while figuring things out here.
Well, we're glad to have you here in Korea.
Thank you.
So, Brooke, what about you? I'm sure your reason was a bit different from Julian.
Yeah, that's a beautiful story. I've been in Korea since August of 2016, so 2026 marks my 10th year in the country. Now, I didn't initially intend to spend almost a third of my life in a different country, but here I am. Just to give a little bit of backstory, I was also in Los Angeles before I moved to Korea. I was a struggling actress, the typical story. I couldn't pay my bills without having to work full time, so I really couldn't audition very much. And I also had a few bad experiences. My home got broken into a few times. And so at some point I realized, gosh, my life just isn't where I wanted it to be. It's not going in the direction that I wanted. And it was at that point that I saw a job advertisement for teaching English overseas. And it kind of felt like a sign from the universe. I don't know why. I just felt like I needed to go. I started researching Korea and it seemed like the right choice for me. I told all my family and friends I would be here for 1 year, just a single year, just a reset, a quick breather before I came back to the US. And now it's been a decade. So I might not have had a particular reason why I came to Korea in the beginning. It was kind of a spontaneous decision. But now I choose to stay here because it really is such a safe, comfortable, wonderful, vibrant place to call home, I would say.
I'm sure you have a lot of reasons why you decided to stay longer.
Yes.
What was one reason then?
Safety.
Safety.
Because I told you I had those experiences in Los Angeles. It's just here they have, CCTV everywhere, and there's a different culture that people grow up in. So I just feel like I can walk around anywhere, even at night, and I feel really comfortable and safe. And I think that's pretty remarkable.
So that experience really highlights what turns a temporary move into a long-term one. It's not just opportunity, but how livable a place actually feels day to day. So we're going to talk more about this, but first, let's take a look at the screen. The influx of people to Seoul is a phenomenon we've been seeing for years. And it's no longer just the capital Seoul that's attracting newcomers, especially young people. Across the country, certain cities are seeing a noticeable rise in young residents. Today on News Generation, we take a closer look at which cities are drawing them in, what these places have in common, and what needs to be done to turn them into cities where young people actually want to stay and build their lives. So as we just saw in the video, the conversation around where people choose to live is clearly changing. So let's zoom in on young Koreans. So when it comes to choosing a city in Korea, where are young people actually moving to and why, Julian?
Yeah, so a report analyzing the population movement amongst millennials and Gen Zers over the past 8 years have been released. So even before the pandemic, Seoul and Gyeonggi province saw high inflows of millennials and Gen Z residents. However, after the pandemic, growth in the Gyeonggi region slowed while Seoul's growth accelerated. Despite Seoul being known for its high housing costs, factors such as jobs, education, and culture were found to play a decisive role. So this shows that people are willing to pay a higher living cost for better opportunities. But notably, the most dramatic change was seen in Incheon. Before the pandemic, the city actually experienced a significant net outflow of millennials and Gen Z residents, but over the past 4 years, this shifted to a net inflow, recording a growth of 8,500%. So overall, the data show the clear trend of our generation concentrating in major urban centers such as Seoul and Incheon.
Right, so what's interesting there is that even with soaring housing costs, Seoul's pull hasn't weakened. If anything, it's gotten stronger. But at the same time, we are starting to see subtle shifts outside the capital region as well. So, Brooke, which cities outside of Seoul are actually seeing more young people starting to move into them?
Right. As we know, Seoul is a fantastic city to live in. It's where we all are. There are understandable reasons for that. But on the show, we always try to highlight other places other than the capital because Korea has many, many wonderful places to live. So looking outside the Seoul metropolitan area, the only regions that have actually seen an increase in the net inflow of millennials and Gen Z individuals over the past 4 years are Seoul, South Chungcheong Province, and Daejeon. And what is interesting here, what is of note, is that all three of these regions used to see the exact opposite effect. Young people were actually leaving those places prior to the pandemic, but now we're seeing that trend reverse now that the pandemic has eased. And meanwhile, most of the other major metropolitan cities continue to see young generations moving elsewhere. So it really highlights that specific regions are doing something special in order to appeal to these young people, which we're going to be discussing as we go.
Right. So outside the capital region, the list is actually remains quite short and very concentrated. So that already tells us something about how hard it is for regional cities to retain and draw young people. So let's take this a step further. So what are the characteristics of the cities that are seeing a larger influx of young people?
Yeah, so there are 3 cities outside Seoul, outside the Seoul metropolitan area that saw an increased numbers of millennials and Gen Zers moving in. Interestingly, they are all actually located in the Chungcheon region. So let's take a look at the screen to find out more. Back in 2012, Sejong City was actually developed by the government as an administrative capital in the Chungnam area as part of efforts to promote balanced national development and ease overcrowding in Seoul. As some government ministries and agencies were being relocated to Sejong, many civil servants, alongside with their families, also moved there to live. In fact, Sejong is now known as one of the cities with the highest fertility rates in South Korea. More broadly, the Chungnam province, located in the central western part of South Korea, has played an important role throughout its history due to its geographic position. So fun fact, some parts of the province actually once served as the capital of the Baekje Kingdom. So people here are generally aware of the historical significance, but culturally, the Chungnam region is regarded for its slower-paced, laid-back lifestyle. So when you combine all the lifestyle factors with the government-led job creation, it really does help explain why more people have been inclined to move to these provinces.
As someone who's lived in Seoul for most of her life, like seeing that laid back vibe sounds really nice. Yeah. And also that background really explains why the Chungcheong region stands out from government policy to history and even local culture. But numbers and policy are one thing and lived experience is another. So Brooke, you actually lived in one of the cities that Julian mentioned. So what is about Daejeon or the cities like it that's starting to change how young people perceive them?
That's right. I did live in Daejeon for about 6 months studying Korean at Daejeon University prior to my graduate school studies, and I have to say it is a different vibe compared to Seoul. It doesn't quite have the same 빨리빨리, like really fast, bustling culture of a city. It's more laid back, like you said. In fact, it was even called a boring city, but that perception is starting to change due to one of my favorite things to talk about, and that is the most famous bakery in Korea. It is my favorite bakery of all time, and as home of this bakery, Daejeon has been gaining a lot of national attention with more and more people going to that city to try those famous pastries. And it's not just that one place. Many of the bakeries in the city are actually run by expert patissiers. And so there's this saying that if you go to Daejeon, you can go anywhere and the bang or the bread will be delicious. Also, I would recommend their kalguksu. They're very famous for this. It's a noodle dish. So Daejeon is also known as the flour city. Basically, if you're a carb lover, Daejeon is the place for you. It also ranked second after Seoul in a 2021 local government evaluation. So it's kind of a rising star in the cities. One other place I want to highlight, which we've already mentioned, is Incheon. So like we said, Incheon has experienced now an inflow of younger people. And although it is part of the Seoul metropolitan area, it surged after the pandemic, the number of young people in it. Incheon is Korea's second largest port city after Busan. Busan and the largest coastal area in the metropolitan region. It's got areas like the Seongdo International Business District, plenty of cultural spaces as well, and of course the Incheon International Airport, which is one of the most beautiful airports in the world, I would say. It's a gateway for overseas visitors. So I think the infrastructure of Incheon and the kind of unique appeal of Daejeon, having those delicious bakeries and special restaurants you can go to, those are the things that these cities are doing right to draw in young people.
So from being a city that was nicknamed by locals, as Brooke mentioned, a boring city, to a destination people travel to just eat good bread, it's a pretty dramatic shift. And when you add in infrastructure, culture, and accessibility in places like Incheon, it paints a very different picture of life beyond Seoul. So to get a first-hand perspective, we'll be speaking with someone who lives in a city located in the central part of South Korea, south of the capital. And that conversation will take place right after the break, so don't go anywhere.
NewsGen wants to hear from you. Go to YouTube and search out channel Arirang News. Click Posts and cast your vote in the poll. Make a new type of news with us.
Joining us today is David, a content creator from the US who currently lives in Cheonan. So hello, David. Thank you so much for connecting with us today.
안녕하세요. 아십니까?
Good to have you.
Yeah, thanks for having me back.
Good to have you back. So out of all the cities in Korea, how did you end up choosing Cheonan?
I know it's random, right? Even people I work with, they're so confused why Cheonan. But it all started when I first came to Korea. Because when I first came to Korea, I lived in a city called Yesan. Now, Yesan, even Koreans don't even know where that is sometimes. It's a very country, rural city. I lived there for 1 year, and I'm originally from San Diego, California. So I'm a Cali boy, born and raised big city, beach cities. So when I moved to Yesan, it was completely opposite of what I ever experienced. So I really enjoyed that. But then after a year, I fell in love with Korea even more and more. And then I was like, you know what, I need a little bigger city. So I would go to Cheonan quite often, meet friends there. And I really fell in love with it because Cheonan kind of had everything that you need in one city. It was more lively, it was bigger, more development. And so that's kind of how I chose Cheonan. And as Brooke mentioned before, a lot of foreigners that come to Korea, they start with teaching in English. So my teaching career really began in Cheonan. So I worked at a high school for 4 years there. Never intended on staying that long, but you know how it goes. All of us have a similar story. And so, yeah, I just fell in love with the city, met a group, good community, and just, stayed here. I really loved it.
Great. So you've lived in several different cities. So how does Cheonan compare, and what would you say are the biggest pros and cons of living there?
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting because obviously Seoul, it's got everything. Everybody loves Seoul. If you're going to come to Korea for the first time, Seoul is the place to be, right? But as you live in more other areas in Korea, you see there's special character that each one has. And so earlier you mentioned Chungcheongnam-do is like that slow, chill vibe, right? So I'm originally from San Diego, and we have that exact same stereotype too. It's like, hey man, laid back, really slow. And so I also noticed that in Cheonan as well. And so for Cheonan, I think there's a lot of pros. One being, I think most people can relate to, is just the housing prices. Like when you're outside of Seoul, the prices can really vary greatly. So I'm very fortunate and lucky enough to have a really huge villa that I live in, a 3-bedroom villa. And it's ginormous compared to what I see a lot of my friends living in Seoul. And so a lot of my friends who live in Seoul, even though they're in popular areas, they maybe live in a 1-bedroom apartment, but it's 3 times the cost of where I live, right? So that's a big price. Another thing is Cheonan is not so far away from Seoul. Most of the work that I do is in Seoul, but honestly, I live right next to the express bus terminal. So it's about a 5-minute walk, hop on a really nice, relaxing express bus, and it takes exactly 1 hour to get to Seoul. So it's not a big issue. And from Cheonan, I can literally get all over Korea because Korea has an amazing transportation system. So I don't find that as much of a problem living here, transportation-wise. And then I think the main thing too is most cities that are under like new development, everything you need to survive and to have fun is in one area. And so where I live in Cheonan, literally everything I need is a 5 to 15-minute walking distance. Hospitals, cafes, bars, restaurants, veterinarian, everything you need. So it's just really easy and fun to live, and it's a lot more chill. As Brooke mentioned earlier, Seoul is a Bali city. So having it more calm, you can drive here, it's more relaxed. It makes it really nice. Yeah. So those are the pros for me. But cons, you're outside of Seoul. And so obviously if you want to be in that area, in the new development, you want to go to these museums and everything that's happening, it's going to take a little bit of a trip to go there, a little bit of a commitment. But yeah, I think there's more pros in what I do than cons.
Well, it's great to hear a story from someone else who wound up staying in Korea far longer than they actually intended to. My last question for you is, in your opinion, what really makes a city appealing to young people?
Yeah, I mean, I feel like I'm not young anymore. You know, I got gray hair sprouting everywhere. But I think when I first came here, and even now, I think Korea is such a special place. And like you mentioned before, all of our stories kind of coincide. I told my parents, yeah, 1 year. Boom, 10 years later, I'm still here. How did that happen? But I think the most important thing, the thing that I always found most spectacular about Korea is kind of what I mentioned earlier, how it's so convenient. Everything you have is in one area. And so for younger people, I think having that access to everything is so appealing, especially somebody that comes from California too. It's such a big place. You need to drive everywhere you go. So it's not, you can't just get up and walk somewhere, go to a restaurant. Oh, you want to go to Icha? You can't do that. But having a city that has everything around it makes it really fun. Also, the community, there's a lot more younger people and people of different ages, so it makes it more invigorating. You can join cafes, you can work on Korean and English, and there's a big bonding community. And I think just having those options make it really lively, especially the younger generation, as I know, they love cafes, aesthetic cafes. You know, you were talking about a bakery earlier, and it's true. There's so many people that love going to these big cafes. So when a city makes a new cafe, the whole city goes, you know, so it's fun. There's always new things redeveloping, and it just makes it like a really fun time. So for me, I think all of that combined makes it great to live and exciting.
When you said you're from San Diego, I was like, there's no way there's anything similar about Toronto and San Diego, but I guess it is the laid-back vibe.
That's true. I think there's nothing similar. San Diego is so opposite of Korea in many ways, but I think it's that laid-back vibe because it's true. People here, my Korean friends here, they're like, oh, 네, 그래, you are more slow and chill than my Seoul friends. So I guess there's a little bit of that, but still at the same time, it's amazing.
Right, it's so cool that there is good infrastructure there. So thank you for raising awareness about that. And just thank you for sharing your insight with us today.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks for having me.
Thank you.
So we just heard from someone who lives in a city outside of Seoul, giving us a first-hand look at what life beyond the capital is really like. So looking at the data though, this isn't just about personal preference. So when we compare the cities that are attracting more young people, do they share any clear advantages in terms of location, jobs, or the cost of living, Julian?
Yeah, so the three cities in the Chungcheon region share common characteristics that are attractive to young people. So they are all located in the central part of the country, which basically means offering relatively good access to the Seoul metropolitan area. So going back and forth from these cities to Seoul isn't too challenging. They also have a concentration of high value added jobs suited for professionals and skilled workers, while housing prices are relatively more affordable compared to the capital region. So this makes it a lot more attractive to young couples. As a result, these three cities have been seeing an upward trend in marriage and childbirth rates.
So beyond location and housing, I know the government has also been really intent on, making people move to cities outside of Seoul. So how much of the shift can be explained at these policies aimed at young people?
Yeah, that's right. Some analysis suggests that youth-focused policies have played a big role in many of the trends that we're talking about today. Cities like Daejeon, for example, offer financial incentives and support programs for newly married couples. So we talk a lot here about the low birth rate. A lot of people say they don't want to have children because of the financial burden. So offering incentives like that is very helpful in easing that pressure. Then we have in South Chungcheong province, they have customized job training programs and support programs for young people that are looking to return to farming or a more rural lifestyle. Those have gained popularity. So essentially these kinds of policies in combination with expanding infrastructure and job creation as well seem seem to have produced very real results in attracting younger residents.
Right, so what stands out here is that these aren't just abstract policies, they're very practical, everyday support systems that directly affect people's decisions from jobs to housing to starting a family. So this made us curious about how people themselves weigh these choices. So we wanted to hear directly from our viewers. We ran a poll on the Arirang News YouTube channel asking, what is the most important factor when choosing a city to live in? So here's what the results showed. So housing prices emerged as the most important factor when choosing a city to live in, cited by 42% of respondents. So that was followed by proximity to work at 30%, highlighting how closely housing and employment decisions are linked. Infrastructure, including parks, hospitals, and public facilities, came next at 24%. And by contrast, the education environment for children ranked far lower with just 4%, suggesting that most respondents were prioritizing immediate, more practical concerns. So what's striking here is that the affordability and work really dominate the conversation, far outweighing factors like education. And that really underscores how day-to-day realities are shaping where people choose to live. So what are, would you say, the traits of cities that young people actually do want to live in, Julian?
Yeah, so there are many factors that cities need to consider when considering how they want to attract young people. Personally, I think a vibrant culture, affordable or free third places where people can gather and socialize, along with overall affordability and safety, play a key role in encouraging people to move. But at the end of the day, the most important factor is jobs. There have to be jobs, there has to be job opportunities, there has to be attractive industries as well that will make someone even consider moving to a city. If people can't get good jobs, people simply will not move to that city.
Right, quality jobs is a very important point. And what are your thoughts on this, Brooke?
Yeah, I would agree. In this economy, stable employment is absolutely vital. Additionally, I would like to highlight the public transportation in a city. Our guest talked about that as well. It is something that a lot of people consider when they are moving somewhere. So that infrastructure to keep up with the influx of people is definitely key. You need reliable public transit, you need sufficient medical facilities, and of course, just those everyday nice amenities like the aesthetic cafes that we talked about. Even those are factors that people consider when they're choosing where they want to live. So I agree, if cities want these younger people to come in, they need to offer meaningful work opportunities and a comfortable living environment, and then they will probably be more likely to retain these young people that are looking to settle into their forever homes.
Right, so today's conversation shows that where young people choose to live isn't just about geography, it's about opportunity, affordability, and the kind of future and fun a city can offer. So as more young people look beyond Seoul, the challenge now is whether cities across Korea can turn short-term interest into long-term belonging. So for regional cities, the question is no longer how to attract young residents, but how to keep them. So that brings us to the end of today's episode of News Generation. But News Gen will be back tomorrow at 10:30 a.m. Korea time with more stories and discussions. A big thanks to Julian.
Thank you for having me today.
And also Brooke.
Great to be here.
And to our viewers, thank you so much for joining us today. And we hope you have the best day. We are
News Generation.
We change today, inspiring daily life. We create tomorrow, inspired by innovation. Change today, create tomorrow. Lotte.
Are you curious about Korean cultural heritage?
If you are a fan of Korean culture and history, listen up. Korean cultural heritage is based on a 5,000-year history.
The whole country is like a massive museum because it possesses such diverse cultural properties. Let's not wait any longer and take a look.
First, for beginners. For those who are not familiar with Korea, let's start with the world-famous list.
You can see how Korea's beautiful traditional patterns and historical features have been preserved.
And don't forget to experience Korea's intangible cultural heritage. From Gangang-sul래 to Talchum, there's just so many exciting cultural heritages to experience.
These are for intermediate level tourists who have already visited Korea and its famous attractions. You might even be standing in a World Heritage Site right now.
How about searching for intangible cultural heritage that you can experience? 한소리, 제주 해녀 diving, 김장. Make some unforgettable memories while having fun.
Last but not least, the advanced level. It's the memory of the World Register. Korea possesses an extensive documentary heritage. Korea is serious about documentation and preservation.
A tour of Korean cultural heritage will become a legacy of your own.
Why not make your own Korean cultural heritage travel itinerary?
Isn't it fascinating?
Hello guys, welcome. Welcome.
Thank you.
Some lovely new faces
Yes.
for our second ever Joseph's A Little Too Special K-food cooking class. So thank you very much for coming, guys.
Thank you so much for inviting us.
Much for invitation.
Thank you. Really, really cool. Before we get started, does everyone want just to introduce themselves? Starting with you, Alfred.
Okay, my name is Alfred. I am from Ghana and I work with the Ghana Meteorological Agency in Ghana. Came to Korea through KOICA to learn digital transformation technology.
I think you might be overqualified for this dish, then. Moving along, I'm gonna
Johnson.
Just forget the H then. Just to forget that H is there. It's throwing me off. Sorry.
So my name is Johnson. I am from Ecuador.
Oh, amazing.
My country, I am research technician. I am mechatronics engineer, and here I am doing a master degree in KOICA as well. And I have a big expectancy here because I am not too well in cooking, but I wanna make my best.
Amazing. Well, I think for today's recipe and everything that we do at the K-food cooking class is that we try to break down what seems to be quite difficult Korean dishes and show how actually easy it is. So hopefully today it inspires you that when you go back to your home countries that you can feel, you can feel it and mix around and showcase that. But before we get onto that, I'll move on. Nirosha?
Yes.
Perfect. I'm getting this right.
I'm Nirosha from Sri Lanka.
Amazing.
We all are Quaker students. We are doing our digital transformation technology masters. Korea